All right, the truth is, I wasn't even thinking about making a video on this particular topic at all. But this has been something that I've noticed about my life a lot, and I think a lot of people feel the same. And this is gonna get maybe a little deep here, but I think a lot of us are suffering a lot more than we need to because we choose to stay quiet. We don't actually say or tell anyone how we're feeling. We don't admit when anything hurts. We don't say when we're disappointed. We just hold it all inside. And then we wonder to ourselves why everything feels so heavy all the time. I used to think that being strong meant staying quiet. If something hurt, you moved on. And if something really bothered you, you just handled it all internally. You didn't make it this big thing, or you didn't talk about it. And on the outside, that looks mature. It looks composed. It looks stable. But on the inside, it's quite the opposite. It builds, it stacks, and it compounds over time. And eventually, it all comes crashing down. And I've noticed something about myself recently, and it's that at the moments that I feel the worst are the moments where I'm not telling people how I'm actually feeling. When I'm replaying something in my head, when I'm holding in frustration, when I'm pretending that something didn't affect me, even though it really did. And that silence does not make it disappear whatsoever. It just traps it. And those trapped emotions do not go away. In fact, they build up. They turn into anxiety and overthinking, and they turn into feeling off and not exactly knowing why. Now, I think a lot of guys especially struggle with this. We're taught that even if nobody actually says it to us directly, showing emotion is weak, and that being vulnerable is just too much and not something that we should do. So we've all learned to kind of suppress it in a way, distract ourselves. We joke it off, we stay busy, and we push through. But pushing through is not the same as processing. Here's the truth. Staying quiet does not make you strong at all. It just makes you isolated. And isolation feels safe because if you don't say anything, no one can judge you. No one can misunderstand you. No one can use it against you. But the cost of all that safety is connection. Have you ever noticed how much lighter you actually feel when you finally say that thing that you've been wanting to get off your chest? Even if the outcome isn't perfect, even if it's awkward, especially if it's awkward, even if it doesn't actually solve anything, there's something about just getting it out that feels so good. And it releases pressure because when it's only in your head, it just keeps on growing. It gets exaggerated and it gets distorted. But when you say it out loud, it becomes real, and real is manageable. And I think a lot of suffering comes from unspoken things, unsent texts, unexpressed disappointment, unasked questions, and unexpressed feelings. And you constantly tell yourself it's fine, but it's never fine. Your mind knows it's not fine, but you just don't know how to deal with it. And I get it. Trust me, it's uncomfortable to speak up. It's uncomfortable to say, that hurt, or I don't like that, or I feel insecure, because now you're exposed. Now you're vulnerable. Now you're risking rejection. But staying silent is a slower kind of rejection. You're rejecting yourself, and you're telling yourself that your feelings aren't important enough to be heard. And I think one of the biggest lies that we've been told is that emotions, they're a burden. That if we show our emotions, it's just too much. But emotions are information. And if something hurts, that tells you something. If something made you uncomfortable, that tells you something. And if something made you excited, that tells you something too. And ignoring all that information doesn't make you logical. It just makes you very, very disconnected. There's also this idea that if you talk about how you really feel, you're weak. But what's actually harder? Holding everything in and pretending that you're fine, or sitting across from someone and actually telling them exactly how you feel? That takes a lot of courage, and it's brave. And silence is much easier in the short term, but expression and actually telling people how you feel is much harder in the long term. But it's also much healthier. And I've noticed when I don't actually express my emotions, they never disappear. They just stay there. And they show up in other ways, like my mood, how I treat people, and how I show up. And the thing is, that's not fair to anyone, including me. Because now I'm just turning something small into something much, much bigger. All because I didn't want to say something when it first actually mattered to me. Now, you don't have to explode. You don't have to be dramatic. You don't have to overshare anything, but you just have to be honest, at least with yourself, because the more that you hold in, the more pressure builds. And pressure eventually breaks something, either you or your relationship or your peace. And there's also something so freeing about no longer pretending, about saying, yeah, that affected me, about admitting that you were hurt, about admitting that you care. That doesn't make you fragile. It just makes you human. And humans, we're allowed to feel things. And suppressing all that doesn't just make you above it, it makes you numb to it. And numb is not strength, it's avoidance. If you're constantly feeling heavy, constantly overthinking, constantly feeling off, ask yourself, what haven't I said? What am I holding in right now? What conversation am I avoiding? And what truth am I too scared to admit? Because usually the weight isn't random, it's unspoken. And you don't have to tell everyone everything, but you should have at least one place where you can be fully honest. One person, or even just a journal, just somewhere where the truth can actually get out. Because your mind is not meant to carry everything alone. And pretending you're fine all the time when you're definitely not, that is exhausting. Now, staying quiet feels controlled, but it slowly disconnects you from yourself. And once you're disconnected from yourself, everything feels harder. Decisions feel harder, confidence feels lower, anxiety, it feels heavier because you're not aligned, you're split. What you feel and what you show are two very different things. And that gap can be very painful. If something matters to you, say it. If something hurts you, say it. If you're confused, say it. Not aggressively, just honestly, calmly and directly, because your own peace is worth much more than your pride. You're not weak for feeling. You're weak for refusing to face what you feel. And if you've been holding something in, if you've been telling yourself that you're fine when you're really not, this is your sign to stop. You don't have to suffer in silence to prove that you're strong. Strength is honesty, and strength is clarity. Strength is being able to say, this is how I feel, and being okay with what comes next. Now, that's all I wanted to say. If this resonated with you, just know you're not dramatic or you're not weak for feeling something and wanting to share it. Stop staying quiet. It's costing you much more than you actually think. See you guys in the next one.